Beginnings. The war was over. The great Meta was dead. The air was heavy with the scent of blood. Yamansa's heart ached as he surveyed the temple floor. Bodies of his fallen warriors were strewn about, and the statues of gods once held in reverence were now in ruins. He stared up into the night sky through a gaping hole in the roof. No longer was he looking upon a sea of millions of white and blue shimmering stars. All he saw was a reminder of those he had lost. Se had protected him and guided him, but it was not enough to save his comrades. His chest heaved as he struggled to breathe and coughed up droplets of blood. Sharp pain pulsed through his body, and he attempted to rise to his feet, but the ache in his chest kept him grounded. I.A.E hobbled towards him, her right leg trembling beneath her every time she placed her foot down. A thin line of blood wound its way from a cut above her nose, but it did nothing to take away from the determination in her dark brown eyes. She kneeled beside him and extended a hand, motioning for him to keep silent. She placed her palms on his chest, a warmth spread from her fingertips, enveloping his entire body in a gentle embrace. A deep violet hue glowed from her hands and passed through his chest, flooding him with an intangible energy. Although he did not understand or control the power of Baaku, he was in awe of the beauty and grace of her abilities.
"It's not much,"
she said, her words heavy with disappointment.
"But it should be enough to get you by for the time being."
He nodded. "Thank you." She offered him a hand and pulled him up. His chest was heavy with guilt. Everywhere he looked were the dead bodies of his men. Limbs and heads were severed, and guts sprawled on the ivory and gold floors. He looked up at the pillars adorned with scenes of the creation of the world and felt a deep sense of sorrow. The once majestic temple of Se had become a tomb for the damned. I.A.E's hand on his shoulder brought him back to reality.
"Do not blame yourself, Yamansa,"
she said, but Yamansa couldn't help but feel responsible for the carnage that surrounded him. Before he spoke, something rattled from across the temple. I.A.E raised her hands. They shimmered with a violet hue. Yamansa's muscles tensed. His sword was gone when he went for it, lost during the fight. He found a spear on the ground. It belonged to one of his warriors. He flicked it up with his foot and caught it. Lycus spilled out from behind an ivory pillar. Blood covered his face and robes. He wobbled toward them like a freshly born calf, unsteady on its hooves. He clutched his left rib. His one good eye stared out at them, wide with relief, and Baaku flickered from his hands in a faint blue light.
"Lycus."
I.A.E rushed to his side and slid her arm under his left one, helping him stand. His body was tense and weak, and the blue light emanating from his hands slowly faded away.
"My Baaku is nearly done,"
he said. I.A.E maneuvered him to where Yamansa stood. She gently propped him against a pillar and placed one hand on his ribs. Warm purple energy surged through her fingers and into Lycus, filling him with enough strength to stand on his own. Good thing mine isn't.
"I owe you one."
Yamansa felt the weight of the spear he held as he looked around the temple of Se. He had defeated the great Meta, but at what cost? His men who stood by his side were all gone. The only ones remaining were himself and the two Blackguards who had been brave enough to join him in his mission. Although the great Meta was a Blackguard far beyond their level of skill, together they triumphed. "But at what cost?" he said aloud. "What?" I.A.E asked, her eyes wide with shock. "My men, my Askari," he groaned, tears streaming down his face. "Their bodies lie still on the pavement, all of them, dead." Rage surged through him, boiling in the depths of his being like hot lava. Fury coursed through every vein like electric currents, directed towards himself for allowing his men to die. Fury towards the Blackguards that had enabled a tyrant like Meta to gain such power. And above all, boiling hate directed towards Baaku. He swore within himself that he would not let his anger be in vain. The deaths of his men would not be forgotten.
"We shall honor their deaths,"
Lycus said in a solemn voice. I will create a memorial hall in which their names will be inscribed on pillars. We will perform the proper rituals so their spirits may be released to Se. I promise you, friend, they will be remembered. Yarai's voice, heavy with sadness, spoke into the still night air.
It won't be enough. You and me, those like us, the Blackguards of this world, have caused too much pain and suffering to go unpunished. We must atone for our sins.
Lycus slowly nodded, his eyes fixated on Yamansa, who stood leering at his spear. What would you have us do, Yamansa? Lycus asked. Yamansa turned his back on the two Blackguards, his emotions conflicted as he took in the carnage, the number of lives lost, and his disdain of Boko. He felt sorrow for his fallen warriors and anger towards the Blackguards that stood with him. He struck the spear into the ground with an explosive force, cracking the pavement beneath. His chest heaving, ripped off his black top, smearing the fabric with the blood of his fallen men. With fire in his eyes, he drew a circle with an X in the center, then drew a line down through the center. He then tied the fabric to the end of the spear as an omen for all who remained. Yamansa's voice shook with rage as he vowed, "On the spilled blood of these brave men, I swear to never let another evil of this scale invade our lands. I swear upon the blood of the dead here at the Temple of Se that together with your unwavering loyalty we shall birth a new Askari." His words echoed ominously through the night as he declared his promise to restore order and justice. Yarai stepped to the left, her hands shaking as she grabbed the spear and a purple light flaring onto the shaft. Lycus moved to the right and grasped the spear, his hand wreathed in faint blue light, which curled onto the spear like smoke. "We are Askari," they said.